welcome to the stream. So we're going to do a Q&A. I'm also going to show you my new drum machine. Question from West Coast Sound. Would you recommend the Nektar Impact LX Mini to use with Reaper? If not, what would you suggest? I'm new to sound effects. Let me just look that up because I don't know what that looks like off the top of my head, but it seems just like a basic MIDI controller. It's a pretty basic MIDI controller by the looks of it. Meaning that this looks like a lot of the other ones. This looks very similar to what M Audio puts out, what Roland, Yamaha, many others are putting out. I don't see any reason not to get this. So this is pretty similar layout to what Arturia has. I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be a good purchase, really. I don't love knobs that are not endless rotaries, but there is a good reason not to use that as well. You can usually make these a lot more sturdy just with standard potentiometers instead of rotary encoders. But you do run into a situation where the knob on the hardware doesn't match what's in the software, so you got to turn it the opposite direction until it catches and the values meet, and then the parameter on screen will follow the knob movement. Sometimes that's a problem, sometimes it's not. These generally last longer, they're more sturdy, but you don't have a value readout. You can't at a glance see what the value is for a particular parameter. And you have to use the what's that called? Soft takeover to actually get that working. It's not a big problem. But I've heard good things about Nektar in this mini keyboard market. I don't think there's really any bad ones. As long as you're going with a brand name, not something that is a knockoff sort of thing, a no-name brand on Amazon or AliExpress or something like that, I think you're fine. I'm in the initial stages of building an orchestral template with Reaper and Vienna Pro 7 server, and would love any ideas or resources that may be available. To be honest, I haven't ever looked at Vienna Pro 7 server or anything like that. If it's anything like working with Contact, I would say you need to decide for yourself whether you have one track for that instrument where you send like 16 channels of MIDI out, and then you have 16 channels of audio coming up on separate tracks. Yeah, and with articulations, I would definitely recommend Reaticulate extension for Reaper, which allow you to jump between sustained, legato, pizzicato, all those things with key switches much easier than having to jump down to the lowest octave. You can just double click on the interface and it will set that for you. It will write it into the MIDI. Yeah, as far as like routing, all that stuff, I don't know because it's specific to that software that I haven't used. Definitely look into the Reaticulate plugin or extension for Reaper to get the most out of that software. And Amelia has a good idea here. Junkie XL's old tutorials on building servers and orchestral rigs. There's so much good information in there that is like Nuendo specific, but we can kind of copy a ton of that stuff. So is touch sensitive what is it? A lemur control surface that he sets up to do different things like show only the active tracks in the time selection, or the tracks that have MIDI on them within the time selection, or just at the cursor, showing only certain groups of tracks, things like that. This is stuff that I've covered on the blog a few times over the years, but definitely check out Junkie XL's videos on YouTube. He hasn't done tutorials in quite a while, but when was that? 2019? Early 2020? He was doing a ton of those. Maybe it was even 2018. But no, it must have been much earlier than that, because that was one of the inspirations for Reaper WRB and the prototypes of that. So yeah, it's really good stuff. The updated Akai MPK Mini has transport controls now. Mine was the Mark II. Yeah, so there's like every MIDI controller is going to have kind of its own little tweak on the design, But most MIDI controllers that I've seen are going to have like 4 to 8 knobs. It's going to have 8 drum pads. It's going to have 25 to 88 keys. It might have a few other buttons. It might have like a shift key that you have to press the MIDI keys to change channels, transpose, things like that. All the MIDI controllers I've ever used have had all these common things. Another option for MIDI controller that's cheap and I think might offer some additional benefits is just getting some cheap synth. So instead of spending like $200 on just a basic MIDI controller, spend $350, $500 on something that has built-in sounds as well. I think you'll get a lot more out of that. Danny, the Spitfire BBC Orchestra, I have a template for that I shared quite a while ago. I can't remember if it's free. Let me just check. So this was actually a collaboration that I did with Eric. Unfortunately, Eric's not making videos anymore. He was starting to get really, really good at that. But he was like my orchestral guy that I collaborated with in 2020. And so we made a template for this. Let's just see if he's posted recently. No, he removed most of his videos as well, unfortunately. Yeah, you can just straight up download that template from my website. So if you just search Spitfire on Reaper.blog, you'll get my template and I don't know. There's a video to watch. Okay, so this is what the template looks like for Spitfire. It has one instrument per track. So there's one of these plugins on each of these tracks, and we're using Reaticulate for choosing techniques, they call it, but they're key switches, really. So Reaticulate plugin, Reaticulate start. Okay, so it's a plugin that goes on each of the tracks, and the Reaticulate plugin handles the key switches. So if I have this track selected and I click on this, you should see that spiccato, pizzicato, tremolo, whatever you want to call it, those change based on a single click. And if I have a MIDI item in here, and so I'm at bar 7, and I double click on spiccato, that puts in a program change into this item. Bank select, I guess it is, for this MIDI event. Rather than clicking in the plugin or having 4 different plugins for just violin 1, I can have one plugin, as long as you're not having the same instrument play multiple simultaneous articulations, which is unlikely in an orchestra, you're fine. So, but if you do need to have like violins 1 playing both pizzicato and legato at the same time, just duplicate the track. But this is a great way of doing it. You can just, I think you can dock this. Yeah, you can dock this. And then depending on which track is selected, it should automatically show you the articulations. So if I'm on piccolo, there's only 2. If I'm on the bassoons, there's 2. Percussions have no, no articulations, nothing you can change. Trumpets have a couple, but the violins, violas, all the strings have the most different techniques available. Most libraries do have this stuff. I don't know if I have this like updated, but based on what comes in the factory collection, I guess you could call it, there's a bunch of stuff from Spitfire, Vera Harmonic, Cinematic series. You can build your own as well. On the website, there's a link to actually download the track articulations for different libraries that aren't included in the factory library. There's like other users share their stuff. Okay, and then Reaticulate, I'll link to that. I don't use it a ton, but I don't write orchestral stuff. And so you can download it here, and then custom banks is where the users share their stuff. This is details on how to create a custom bank, but download user contributed banks. There's quite a lot here. Vienna Symphonic, This has got to be what you were looking for. You can get everything here. So if I wanted just this particular library, I would click on the download raw file link. Oh, you can't see it. It's under my camera, isn't it? Hang on. You can click on raw and then Control S to save or download raw file. There you go. That's about all I can think of with the topic of Reaticulate. Small tubes, you said, I disagree. Until you understand what's going on, I recommend going cheap or used. You can spend a lot and still not achieve what you want. Start slow and cheap, move up as you grasp. I think that's in regards to the small synth option. If you're looking for sound effects, it's nice to have a sound effects source. So there's a lot of different sounds you can make using hardware synth. You're more likely to tweak things when there's a knob that controls every parameter, unlike having to manually map everything to a MIDI controller. I mean, you can do that, but from my own experience, I don't. So I might map like just the cutoff to a knob, but most of the time I just end up writing automation or something. But when you can just like make a sound within a device and then hit record and you have it, that's so much easier. That's my experience. I was software only for many years, and then I got the Minilog XD a few years ago, and yeah, then it's been a journey of buying stuff ever since. Well, Amelia, you brought up C Hensen. I don't know if he's fantastic. I mean, I have to say I've enjoyed many of his videos over the years that he's done for Spitfire, but I'm very resistant to look at what he's doing these days since he did all the transphobic stuff. I'm just avoiding it, okay? He seemed like a really good guy. Then there was that thing. I don't know what to think. There's still a ton of things we can learn from him, but maybe just with music. Not Jay Leno asks, are there any features in any other DAW that you wish were in Reaper? Macro controls like Bitwig and Ableton. That's the big one. Just easier control of multiple parameters across tracks or within the effects chain. We can do that, but it's not optimized yet. It should be just drag and drop, I think, to the knob and then start working. I'm sure they can do it. It's just a matter of how long can we wait. I survive without it, but I do think it's a pretty cool feature to have in live. Clip launching natively, I think that should be integrated. We have the Playtime plugin, but it is complicated. It's definitely not as straightforward. There's quite a lot of work to get going with that. Being able to use something like the launch pad, that shouldn't be something that only Ableton Live users can take advantage of. Or what are those things called? APC? All the like Ableton Live specific controllers, we should have an equivalent workflow in Reaper that just makes that all happen automatically, because it does make live performance much simpler. Those are the two things top of mind. I wish Reaper could do what Cakewalk does with creating tempo maps, which when you drag a track up to the tempo bar, turns blue, then Melodyne analyzes it and sets the tempo map. That's interesting. That's pretty cool. I personally don't have a use for that, but I think that's a pretty cool, that's a cool idea. How connected to the Reaper programmers is the REAPER.blog? I don't know for sure. Justin is a supporter on Patreon. If I have a question about video processor stuff, he said it's okay to email him for that. But in general, I'm not talking to them on a regular basis. I post feature requests or bug reports and they respond most of the time, but not always. And the same goes for pretty much anyone else that does. They might weigh my opinion a little higher than other users, but I don't know for sure. Is there a way for Reaper to detect and map tempo of a freeform recorded performance, sort of like Logic Smart Tempo. We were just talking about that a minute ago. Automatically, there might be a way to do that. I would be starting from scratch with learning that. Off the top of my head, no, because for me, it's not a difficult thing to do. I already know how to do that in several different ways. So I haven't looked for more smart functions of tempo mapping. There very well could be a script or something. There's lots of things for like create tempo markers from notes in items, convert project markers to tempo. So like what I tend to do is just put in a project marker on the downbeat of each section, or on every quarter note of the musically what's in the file, and then convert that to tempo markers. I find that to be pretty easy. Or I just make selections with snapping turned off, and then I make a.
They're throwing your money away.
Thank you, El Diablo. Making a time selections and then converting the time selection to a tempo change. That's usually how I do it. There's also like the warp grid thing from SWS. Can't really explain it at the moment because I don't have a recording that's free tempo. A million ways, but nothing that's like drag and drop or just select and generate multiple tempo changes that I've seen. Someone was talking about MP4s in Reaper. Make sure you have VLC as your playback engine, and it should be fine. There's a few sort of default settings in Reaper 7 that I don't like with video playback. If you use VLC, the latest version, 64-bit, you should have clean playback. I'm mostly doing MKV files, not .mp4. If your files are coming from OBS, for example, make sure you're not recording to MP4 because it's not safe for like power loss, or if the app crashes, you lose your recording. You want MKV so that it's continually writing data instead of just at the end. Saves you from corrupting data. But if it's like from a camera, you can't really change the format. I'll just show you my setting here. Media video, just set it to VLC, nothing else. I would recommend this on Mac or Windows. For me, this loads everything, plays it cleanly, allows time stretching and stuff with good stability. Is there already a way to customize track layouts and themes without downloading scripts? I know about the theme editor in Reaper 7, but I miss the extra customization. Not without scripts. Yeah, layouts specifically require the script for the default 7, unless you make a copy of the default 7 theme and start customizing on your own. Yes, but not easy. There's nothing built in. But what they're going to have built in is actually the script. Layouts used to be like handwritten into the theme files, and then with Reaper 6, they added the theme adjuster, and then you only had 3 layouts. Any Reaper 4 and 5 theme would often have like, I don't know, 15 different layouts, which is cool, but if there was a bug with one of them, you would have to like download the theme again or edit it. Couldn't find a straightforward to copy take volume envelopes to another item or take. Take volume envelope. You can try just dragging the volume, the envelope icon to an item. All right, so I'll do a volume envelope, and I'm going to drag this icon over to this other item. And yeah, that works. And what if I do a time offset and then drag that? That seems to be the same. That's how I would do it. To another take. Let me duplicate a take. Okay, so there is an envelope icon for each take as well, so you can drag. Can you drag? Yeah, you can drag that between takes as well. Hopefully that answers that for you. Let me know if not. Someone should do an all-in-one script for snapping, grids, and tempo maps and call it Snapping Turtle. I like it. I like that a lot. So on that topic of grids and stuff, I added this script called grid menu. It's adaptive grid menu. So when I click on it, I get a list here. So rather than going into the grid button or the snap to grid window and then choosing from this list, I could just do it here. I used to have like 10 buttons on my toolbar to change the different grid values that I use commonly. Now I just use this. It's great. I did use the grid division shortcuts for a while, but I'm finding the menu just a little more straightforward for me. Let me check my MIDI editor. I think I had something. Yeah, I haven't put the grid menu in the MIDI editor toolbar yet, but I should. Oh yeah, multiply. So option right. All right, so I'm zoomed in here. Option left is changing my, option left and right is changing my grid size, and you can see that on the toolbar icons. I do kind of miss that in the main window, seeing which, at a glance, which grid resolution is set, but it's not a big deal. I don't think about it all that much. Ideas and tips for using Global Sampler. How do you use it in your projects? I have my Global Sampler script or a JS effect in my monitoring effects chain. So it's post master, and then I have it docked. It's up there in the top right corner. If a sound happens that if I wasn't recording, I just drag and drop. I'm not using it every day, but I use it a fair amount. Sometimes I'm just like messing around trying to find a sound, and I realize I've already recorded it because Global Sampler is running. It doesn't always work though. Sometimes you're tweaking a track along with a mix, and you find some weird glitch sound that you want to keep, but because the whole mix is playing, you can't. So you rearranged your entire room today? Congrats. That's quite the ordeal, and I haven't done it in a little while, but there is a bit of a temptation to do it again, honestly. I like this setup, but there's just never enough flat surface to put equipment anymore. And there's a lot of clutter right now, and it drives me a bit crazy. Let's switch topics. So we've done Q&A for a little bit. Floor is a flat surface. Yeah, a bit hard to reach. I got pedal board. I got 2 different pedal boards on the floor already. The floor is lava.
Behold my stuff.
So this is the Yamaha RX17. I bought it because it was $100 with free shipping. It's one of the worst drum machines I've ever used. And I haven't used many, but it is pretty bad, I'll be honest. So the RX series from Yamaha does have some good and bad models. Usually the higher the number, the worse it is, or the more like consumer oriented it is. And then the lower the number, like the RX5, is more professional. It has like a whole mixer built in. It has individual outs and stuff like that. So this has 3 outs, MIDI in, out, through, and not great sounds. You can't really change the sounds. There's 2 layers of sounds. There's an accent, which doesn't trigger a different sample, just a higher velocity. Not touch sensitive, like not velocity sensitive pads. I feel like this sounds like die off, decay too quickly. Just a slight volume boost. We can go to change instrument and then press the right arrow and then yes. And then now I'm on the lower level of what is written here. So instead of bass drum, it's TMBRN, tambourine, rim shot, conga, bongos, agogo. So, all right, I'm going to go to pattern and then press 5-0 because that's that's the first factory kit. Oh yeah, and then tempo. The tempo slider doesn't work on this one. I gotta go to tempo. Somehow it defaulted to, or somehow I got it to change to 250 BPM. And now it just stays there, and I don't know how to change that. It's pretty basic. Sounds like the same samples from Casio of that era. So you can advance by clicking the +1 or yes button. The menus are pretty bad on this. So let's go to like 60. And then, I don't know. That's pretty bad. It does not gracefully manage open and close hi-hats. It's pretty bad. But it does have MIDI in. And don't worry, I will sample this for you guys. You will all get a copy of the 16 drum sounds or whatever it is. It was $100. Do I have some remorse for buying this? A little bit. I don't know. I can do MIDI in with it. And it has a real-time and step sequencer modes. The step sequencer is pretty bad. So I'm going to clear the pattern. Yes. I'm going to go to real right 00. Yes. Length. I'll set this to 32. So this flashing part at the bottom, that's showing, this is like the pages of the menu. This took me a while to figure out. I don't know why I'm like explaining this to you because you're not going to have one. Yeah, anyways, you can set the quantize amount here. There's no record button, right? So it's a little confusing, like how do you start this? But when you're in this screen here, you can press start. The click track will play faintly. And then I guess when we're done here, click on pattern, and then I can play it without overwriting. And I can change to the upper layer and then overdub some congas. And it's so cheesy. It's so fucking cheesy. At the same time, I kind of like it. It's like, it's a 1987 drum machine, and I didn't have one of them. I like, at this time, were people like done with the 808? People were like sick of the 808? I don't know. I think you can write songs with it for a 4-track recording. You can build up a song with it. So let me just play one of these songs. Let's do song 1. Not mine, this is what was programmed in here. I actually love the TR-505. So yeah, I will sample this. Let's just do it now. In addition to getting this, I ordered another Yamaha product that looks quite similar. It's the Rex 50, which is apparently like the SPX 90 in a different box, more of like a desktop type box. If you don't know, SPX 90 or Rex 50 are multi-effects processors. I'm not sure of the year of that. Yeah, so I got that for another 100 with free shipping. I used to have an SPX 90. I tried circuit bending it and I got some amazing sounds, but before I could finish it, I ended up destroying it. SPX 90s sound quite nice. Yeah, I'm gonna hit record and we'll just quickly sample this. There's not that many sounds here. And it's not velocity sensitive, so whatever. So I'll cut that up, make that a sample. All right. I might record it again louder. I don't feel like the kick is that bad. Let's boost this up. That's a pretty solid kick. It's a pretty decent kick, honestly. There's no stereo information in this. It's like, I guess there is panning, but everything's mono. It's fine. It's fine. TR-505. I really like that. I think if I go to my some of my favorite like synthwave drum sounds, 505 kick drum. It's just a great kick drum. The kick and the snare on the 505 are just wonderful. 505 bass drum reminds me a lot of Carpenter Brute. So I think that's why I like it so much. Question from Kev K Bass Music. How do you move an item from one track to another vertically without shifting horizontally? Yeah, great question. I did do a video about this a million years ago. So let's say we've got an item here. Got snap turned off. So if I want to just drag this down, there's a chance that I'll move it to the side. If I hold down the control key, that's shifting it. So, or it's splitting it. But the way I've got it set up is it's not going to move left or right, only up and down. So to change that, that's in mouse modifiers, media item, left drag. It should just be called move item vertically. Yeah, control for move item vertically. You have to add this to move item vertically. I also have a copy item vertically. I use that a fair amount. I've got a sound here and I want to copy that. Just do that. And doing that, it can't move left and right, so it always stays in time. Do you think SoundToys are must-have? I have so many plugins that can get me close and have air plugins also. So many saturation plugins that can probably do what SoundToys Decapitator does. Yeah, Decapitator isn't one of my most used SoundToys plugins. I don't think they're a must-have. There's a lot of sound designers that use those plugins. There's so many options. I've had them for many years. They're not my most used plugins, but I do use them a fair amount. I don't know. I got a pretty good deal on them. I've been following that company for a really long time. So they used to do like yearly giveaways of the little versions of plugins. And then it would be a couple years before they sell the big plugin, and they would offer a discount for anyone that had the little version. I had gotten those, I don't know, 5 times or something. And then when they offered the version 5 bundle with a discount, I had so much credit on that stuff that yeah, I was able to get that pretty cheap. demo them. The 5 bundle for $235. There might be a better deal than that. I don't think mine was that much. $175 US is what I paid. And then since then, $32 to get their plate reverb. Let's shift gears to do something else. Yeah, let's do a bit of a VCV Rack. I've caught myself looking at modular synths again, considering actually making a purchase. I feel bad about it. I feel guilty for doing that, kind of. Because VCV Rack is free and I don't take advantage of it. It would be very dumb for me to like make at least $1,000 purchase without even building the thing in VCV Rack first. All right, so do I need to do a brief tutorial on VCV Rack? I need to kind of remind myself. So maybe I should. Okay, so most modular synths start with some basic building blocks. I've got a way to get things in, like trigger notes. So MIDI to CV is that device. And then on the opposite end, we've got our audio output. So a way for us to hear it. You could skip this if this was hardware, but this would be like a module that has USB output or just kind of a dedicated master output or something like that. You can always run out of the filter outputs or a mixer output. For us, that's how we're being able to hear it. So we've got a mixer module where we can combine sources and then control them through CV, control voltage. So this has 4 inputs, 4 outputs, and a mix output. Then we've got LFOs, low frequency oscillators. So this is something that can generate a control voltage that fluctuates over time in different wave shapes, sine, triangle, saw, or square. We can change the frequency, and for the square, we can change the pulse width. And we can even modulate this from another LFO or some other device that sends control voltage, and we can change the frequency, kind of automate this through control voltage. We've got VCOs. So VCOs are oscillators, voltage-controlled oscillators. So we can choose a pitch. We can control the pitch through LFO, output different wave shapes, sine, triangle, saw, or square. We've got modifiers for which octave. So coming from the MIDI controller or anything else, we can kind of offset this by an octave. So there's a control voltage called voltage per octave, or 1 volt per octave, and that's generally like pitch. That can be offset by this octave module. WT VCO. I've never used this one. So this is another oscillator. I think it might have a, oh, you can load in wavetables. So it's just a different type of oscillator that uses wavetables. The last thing I touch when I press the delete key, that's what gets deleted. There's a noise generator module, and then there's an ADSR. ADSR is attack, decay, sustain, release. This is an envelope generator. That's what EG stands for. And so when we have a trigger like a MIDI note, it applies this control voltage over time to either the filter or a VCA. There's a VCA module here, which is just a volume control. So we can adjust volume over time to get a particular shape. And then a filter. So filter is a type of equalizer. There's low pass and high pass in this particular one. You can output from both of them at the same time if you want. You can control all these parameters using CV. And any of these modules within VCV can be duplicated. You can have an infinite number of them and use cables between by just drag and drop to build up a synthesizer patch. If we right-click any empty area, we get the list of additional plugins or modules. Some of these are included. Some of these are things that I've downloaded over the years. If you look at the VCV Rack website, there's over 3,000 modules, and the majority of them, almost 2,700 of them, are free, which is pretty crazy. Some of these are like complicated synthesizers on their own. It's a whole world that you need to learn. And some of them are modifiers for other things, and they kind of work together. So none of them really like takes MIDI in, generates a sound, and filters it and sends it out all by itself. Like if you bought a synthesizer from the store. You can really get lost in VCV Rack. So if I was to build up a synthesizer that is like a really basic thing. So let's take, let's connect my voltage per octave to frequency of the oscillator. No, this one, voltage per octave. The gate goes to the gate of the ADSR. The VCO is constantly outputting voltage, and I'll just, so you can hear that. VCO is always going. We control note on and off by the gate signal from the MIDI to CV module. And we're going to trigger the ADSR from that. So when I press a key, you can see the ADSR module lights up. So the output of the VCO is going into the filter. It could go into a mixer. It could go into the VCA. There's merits to all of the different options. But we're going to go VCO straight to filter. And then the LFO output will go to the input of the VCA. And we will take the envelope output of the ADSR to the CV input of the VCA. At least with the stock modules with VCV Rack, the black sections are the outputs and the white sections are the inputs or CV controls. So if I press a key, you can see that the VCA opens according to this shape. So I can put sustain up and it stays at that level. I can lower the decay time. I can decrease the attack. I can shorten the release to nothing. It's instantly on off. We're not hearing anything because the output of the VCA doesn't go anywhere. So we're going to take the output of the VCA. Let's go into input 1 of the mixer and then send the mix out into the mono output of the audio interface. And I would expect to hear it at this point, but I think I missed something maybe. It was filtered. That's what I missed. It was filtered. So we're not going to use the sine wave. We're going to take the square wave. Hey, Aunt Rave. Welcome. Yeah, we're doing this instead of spending money, actually, because I was looking at just the cases. And I'm like, I can't afford even the case and power supply of a rack. It's still going to happen, but it's just a matter of time. So we've got MIDI note coming in. It's triggering the ADSR. The ADSR is controlling the VCA or volume. That's going into the mixer where we can combine it with 3 other sounds and then go to the audio out. So let's also trigger the noise generator. And so we could use the same filter. I think I can feed into that, but I do want, I don't know. Let me think. If you have your filter after the ADSR, then if the filter is resonant, it won't be controlled by the envelope generator. Yeah, so this mixer actually has to come earlier in the chain. So we want to go into a mixer after, so it'll be VCO out into the first input of the mixer. Then we've got the, let's do a white noise into input 2. So at this point, these are constantly generating sound. They're not controlled by anything yet. Both of these are going to go into the mixer. The mixer goes into the filter goes into the VCA, and then the ADSR will control the VCA output. So, yep. And then the output goes to the audio interface. Okay. So we have the square wave output and the white noise. Let's duplicate this ADSR. We will trigger it from the same gate, and we will send the envelope output to the cutoff. And we're going to lower the sustain. So we've got our own envelope generator for just the filter. There's a bit too much noise, so we'll turn that down on channel 2. Cool. We can use this LFO with a triangle output going to the pulse width modulation. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, this is kind of like the bare minimum you need to make a sound with a modular synth. You probably want some sort of way to get a keyboard into it, or at least some sort of like push button or something, some way to interact with it to trigger a note. You need at least one oscillator, probably a noise generator, or some sort of sound source. You need a way of combining sounds, a way of filtering them, VCA, at least one VCA, ADSR times 1 or 2, and then a way to get to the output. You can take an output from just straight from the filter or just straight from the mixer into another mixer to do volume adjustments or impedance matching and things like that. A sequencer would be good. So there is a built-in sequencer. So once we right-click in an empty area, the search bar is automatically selected. So if I choose sequencer, this is the one that comes with VCV Rack. So what this does is generate a clock pulse, or which can be like the gate output, and then you can modulate different things. So there's 3 sets of CV where you can have different settings per step of the sequence. So I think trigger output is what I'm looking for. And so instead of the gate from the keyboard, we're going to trigger gate from the sequencer. So we're just generating a note. So let's say we want to adjust like the release time or something. Let's do kind of like random values for this. And so that is, this row is CV1. So we're going to take CV1 and attach that to the release and then run the. So there's these small knobs on the ADSR, and we can scale back the amount of the CV coming in. So when it's at 0, this is the setting, right? But we can use this. So it's going to use 100% of the CV coming in for the steps that have it. Or we can invert it. Can we link that to the same thing? Yes, we can. We can. There's a lot of times when we can stack cables. already that's a little bit more interesting. All right, let's look for random. So there's a random generator here. And I want to put some random onto this LFO. So we're going to take the, let's do the linear output and attach that to the frequency modulation. And, or maybe exponential. Yeah, that's fine. Trigger input. You could probably trigger that from the sequencer. And if we're not sure what a device is outputting, we can always use the scope. So let's say we take the linear output and we can see what kind of voltage is being put out. So shape at 0 is more of a square wave and more like a triangle wave. Let's duplicate this LFO. So I'm going to stop this. I just want to show something that I think is pretty cool and something I figured out on my Poly D. So on my Poly D, I can't show you at the moment, there is oscillator 4 and it can be used as an LFO. And so it can be kind of cool to have that set to triangle. And then also there's the LFO section, which can be set to triangle. And you can blend both LFO and oscillator 4 LFOs together. There's a modulation mix control. So setting those to different settings can be really interesting. So I want to show you kind of what that looks like on a scope. So we do need something that can merge. This one, I think, can do it. So I could take a 2 triangle wave, 2 triangle waves, and we will set them to different frequencies. And then the mix out will go to the scope. So you can do this rapidly up and down motion that is scaled by an overall slower movement, which is pretty cool. So let's do, let's get rid of the filter cutoff modulation and set that after the scope. And actually, I'm not liking this now. Let's trigger the gate from the synth again. Or from the keyboard. Well, I think there's a really interesting way of doing LFOs. I usually go at like extremely slow though. And I might also take the sawtooth output. To be honest, I don't really like the sound of these filters. And I don't know, the VCO on this is kind of not my favorite, I guess. So, to be fair, I am used to having three VCO at a time, usually. So let's do that. And sometimes I really like taking a square wave oscillator that's really fast, and it almost becomes like an oscillator on its own, just by the distortion that it makes. Okay, so that's an interesting sound we've got here. So the envelope output I also want to control the VCF. Or maybe I just make a second VCF that that is controlled by the cutoff. Really long attack. And then the output of this one, no. Can I do this? I don't know if I can do this, actually. VCF goes to there. Output of the VCA goes into the input of the second filter, and then that goes to the output. Unfortunately, it cuts off instantly. Oh, but that's because of this. Or it's all being filtered out. Anyway, yeah, so VCV Rack, it's very cool. It's free. It's worth checking out if you're at all interested in modular synth, or you want to understand how the different components of a synthesizer work. Today kind of created a basic subtractive synth for weird sounds using random, using LFOs, using a couple filters. But it's really endless. That's the thing with VCV Rack and modular synthesis in general. It's kind of endless. There's a million things you can do, and this is just a few things that I downloaded. And like I said, there's 3,000 available modules on the website. Anyways, I think we're going to wrap up here because I do have a meeting after lunch today. So we will have to end our session here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I had fun. I hope you did as well. I wish we had more time today. But yeah, I wanted to cover the different things for the latency when recording through reinsert. Maybe another time. Okay. Have a great day, guys and girls, if you're there as well. Thank you for watching. Just a couple more streams left, so 2 more, I think. No big plans for number 50, but that will be the last one for a while. So hopefully you can join me 22nd. 22nd will be the last stream of the year. And then finally a day off. See you later, guys.